We have two phones right here. The Oppo Find X9 Pro with the MediaTek Dimensity 9500 and the OnePlus 15 with the Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5. So welcome to our battle vid. And today we're going to see who has the best chipset. Is it MediaTek with Dimensity 9500 or is it Snapdragon? Let's find out. Hey guys, Thunder E here, and it's been a while since I've done a battle vid like this. Usually it's once a year for the chipsets, and we're going to see how MediaTek's latest 9500 chipset compares to the Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5. Now, the reason I went with these two phones is that yes, Oppo is the parent company of OnePlus, and they have very close similarities to both devices here. So let's take a look at the hardware first for both devices. So let's start off with the Oppo Find X9 Pro. Now, the device comes with a 6.7 inch display, gorgeous display. This also comes with 12 to 16 gigabytes of RAM, and of course is powered by the MediaTek Dimensity 9500 chipset. Now, the cameras are pretty awesome on this device. Definitely check out my camera video I did in Guanajuato, Mexico on my trip with Oppo. Lovely camera there, especially shooting with the 200 megapixel camera with the teleconverter lens. Truly amazing stuff, great stuff. But back to the hardware itself, 7500 milliamp battery. It's a massive battery in this device. And yes, it is thicker. It doesn't feel as big as you would expect with such a big, massive battery in here. Now you do have 80-watt wire charging, 80-watt wireless charging as well. So we'll see how the battery life actually compares when we game on this device, but also see what kind of performance that Dimensity 9500 chipset gives us. Now looking at the OnePlus 15, the device is also 6.78 inches and it spots a 50 megapixel camera, which we will of course check out later, but the hardware has some similarities as well, 12 to 16 gigabytes of RAM. We do have of course that Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5 processor in there, and the battery is 7300 milliamps, so slightly less, but again, over 7,000. This is quite impressive for batteries here. Now, when it comes to charging, we have 120 watt wired charging and 50 watt wireless charging. So impressive charging speeds if you want to bulk up those massive batteries here. Now, the devices itself, when you look at them side by side, they have a very similar look to them. The camera housings are displayed differently, but the general area looks and feels the same. The camera housing for the Oppo is thicker. You do have that telephoto and 200 megapixels as well. But overall, I do like the look of both devices. Now, let's get into the main dice of the matter. Let's take a look at, of course, our benchmarks. And looking at Geekbench here, you can see that our CPU scores for the Oppo is single core 2863 and multi-core 9079. So not past 10,000 on multi-core, while the OnePlus 15 with the Snapdragon here has 3,596 for the single core and 10,136 for multi-core here. So Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5 is continuing the benchmarks we saw from Snapdragon Summit here, which are pretty high, especially when it comes to the single core and multi-core scores. Now moving over to GPU scores, here there are some big differences here. While the MediaTek on the Oppo gives us 22,393, the Snapdragon gives us 24,065. So a huge bump here, again, showing that that Snapdragon processor has a beefy tail to it. But what does that mean for us as gamers in terms of performance, also temperatures and things like that? So starting off with the very first game, Destiny Rising. Now, Destiny Rising is a game where you can max out on 90 frames per second, but we're able to only get 60 on both devices. Then again, that is just, of course, a new chipset, so that's something you would experience again until this is actually fleshed out, because these two devices just came out recently. The chipsets also came out recently, but Destiny Rising plays really well. Fluid and smooth control support also is pretty solid on there, but 60 frames per second on both devices, and it works pretty well. Now, when we move over to, of course, Genshin Impact, this is a game, of course, that uses a lot of intensity here, a lot of performance, and both devices, both the MediaTek, both the Snapdragon with the OnePlus 15 and the Oppo, run it at 60 frames per second, no stress, no bother. This is where we started taking temperature readings with the device here, and you can see on both devices we're getting roughly around 90s in terms of temperature. This was between about 10 to 15 minutes of gameplay for both the OnePlus and the MediaTek. Now, do mind you guys, when it comes to temperatures, different cooling systems are built into these devices that would dictate how cool the device runs. So that's not necessarily the chipset, but also how the manufacturers actually set them up. But in terms of performance, it's the same here. Now, when we move over to Delta Force Mobile, Delta Force, of course, is a game that has no control support. I will say this every time until they add into the game because it's a fun game to play. We're able to go to max settings for FPS up to 120 FPS for both devices and both chipsets, and both the MediaTek and the Snapdragon with the OnePlus gave us 120 frames per second. So this is really solid to see. Again, smooth, solid gameplay across the board. Then next up, of course, is PUBG Mobile. And with PUBG Mobile, maxing out the settings, as you would expect, getting 120 frames per second on both the Oppo Find X9 Pro and the OnePlus 15. So MediaTek and Snapdragon doing that 120 frames per second there. Now, the last game is usually the first game I always play, which is Call of Duty Mobile. But here I wanted to actually showcase something that the OnePlus does to see if it actually does it well. Is the OnePlus states that it can go up to 165 frames per second because that display supports 165 frames. You know, the new OnePlus Core, which is very, very interesting to see. So I put both devices at max settings, and first looking at the Oppo Find X9 Pro, I was able to do 120 frames on here, and the game played really smooth on the Oppo Find X9 Pro. Now, when we move over to the OnePlus here, using the same settings, boom, we're able to get up to 165 frames per second. Now, there are a couple of games that OnePlus mentioned that does support 165 frames. You see them on screen here. So that is really cool to see, but that's not an indication of whether the processor can support it or not. This is something OnePlus has done. OnePlus has that OnePlus Game Core, which is really nice to see here. Now, when it comes to temperatures across the board for both devices, the maximum temperature I got was about 101 degrees. Even for Genshin Impact, playing them for about 30 minutes, it stayed about 100 to 102. Literally, that's it. So this devices ran really cool. That's a testament to the cooling they both have for the Oppo and the OnePlus. But again, it shows also some of the effectiveness of the chipsets from the Dimensity 9500 and the Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5, which means they both have better cooling overall. None of these two companies actually mentioned any like stringently crazy new cooling systems in there. Now, what about battery life? Well, this is huge. If you like to game on the go with your smartphone and you're not using a gaming phone, these two devices will do it for you. The 7500 milliamp on the Oppo and the 7300 milliamp on the OnePlus do really well. On the OnePlus, played for about 20 minutes, 30 minutes, I would say, and I dropped from 100 to 98%. Same thing with the Oppo. I think the Oppo was maybe about like 97, 96. Playing for roughly 2 hours, I dropped down to about 85% on the OnePlus and roughly around 84 to 83% on the Oppo. So battery life is great. I mean, these batteries are good and the devices do not feel heavy. That's a really good thing here to see. So I definitely like that. I think a lot of people will appreciate that with these devices. But when it comes down to the brass tacks, who is better for gaming? Is it MediaTek or is it OnePlus? Well, the answer is both are. And simply because the games we have and also the kind of performance these devices push out, they can handle the games you want to see quite easily on Android ecosystem. Now, emulation, that's very different, as well as also playing current PC games. That's also very different as well, which is part of emulation. But when it comes to Android gaming, boom, it's a breeze. Doesn't matter if you're a MediaTek user, if you're using the 9500, you're going to experience something great, and the Oppo provides that. Or if you're using the Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5, you're also going to get a super smooth experience. Now, I definitely want to check out the Red Magic, so I'll let you guys know once I get my hands on that device, hopefully soon. But I think a lot of people are going to enjoy this altogether. So if you have any questions or any comments, let me know. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and always enjoy your entertainment.